Welcome to Pera's Playbook. This is your host, Alex Pera. Let's open up our playbook and see who our guest is. Please enjoy. Welcome to episode 194 of Pera's Playbook. Today we're joined with Allan Bester. He's a former NHL goalie, played 230 games for the Maple Leafs, the Red Wings, and the Dallas Stars. We're happy to have Allan on the podcast. It's been a while in the planning, but we're finally doing it, so that's what counts. How's it going?
It's going well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate your patience in the scheduling. Sometimes that can get a bit messy, but it always ends up happening eventually, the podcast. I had one guy, we were in contact for over a year, just kept messaging back, oh no, this date doesn't work, that day. And then eventually we finally did the podcast. So just, it always happens eventually.
Well, I'm got some flexibility because I work from home, so it works out pretty good that I can take an hour or whatever we need to do this during work hours.
Yeah, that's awesome. I spoken with a few of your former teammates. I spoke with Bob Wilkie. He was an early guest on the podcast. And then before I did this podcast, I had a podcast called the Twig Snapper podcast where I only interviewed hockey players. And I spoke with Rick Vive on that podcast
Yep,
a few years ago. So a
good old
couple of your
squid.
former, they were both wonderful to talk to. Both great guys.
Yes, yeah, Squid and Bobby are good guys.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about your career a little bit. And then we can talk about a few other things, kind of the way the game has changed and some different things too. But you were playing in the OHL and you were drafted in the third round in '83 to the Leafs. Leading up to the draft, did you have a lot of contact with teams? Did you know you were going to get drafted? Did you have an idea of where? How was that whole months leading up to the draft for you?
Well, Central Scouting had me rated as the number one goaltender for the draft. So prior to the draft, and then that changed right before the draft, where Tom Barrasso was rated number one and I was rated number two. So I was talking with my agent at the time. I hired Don Meehan, and they told me that I would go a high draft pick. So um, it was quite a few possibilities. Toronto decided to take me in the third round, which was great. And right after I got selected, as walking up to the Toronto's table and everything, because I went to the draft that year, and Pittsburgh Penguins stopped me to tell me that I was their next pick if Toronto hadn't taken me. So yeah, it was a good feeling, and I was very happy. I grew up in a household which was basically Leaf fans because I lived in Hamilton, even though I was a Montreal Canadian fan at the time. But uh, yeah, my dad was very happy because he was a huge Leaf fan.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm sure he would have been happy anywhere you went, but
Absolutely.
always cherry on top when it's the team he already roots for. Now he's got extra reason to root for him. And you were at the Leafs for quite a while. That's where you played the longest. That's where you played the most of your NHL portion of your career. So you got to stay there for a while. Did you, out of all the stops, that you went along the way, which one was your favorite?
Well,
Was it the
Toronto, of
Leafs?
course. Toronto, of course, because I was there the longest. With a lot of pressure, a lot of conflicting information. They kept telling me I needed to stand up, stand up. Well, that was not my game, and it caused issues with goals between my legs because I was trying to stand up. If they just let me play my game, I'd have been fine. The greatest advice I got was from Johnny Bauer, and I told him, I said, they keep telling me to stand up, but, it makes it difficult because that's not my style. He said, "Do what got you here. Play your game." He goes, "We drafted you for a reason. Do what got you here." So we were playing in Montreal. It's probably my second year of playing in Montreal. First time I'd been in the Forum, and Dan Maloney's like, "No, you got to stand up tonight, Alan." I said, "Okay." So I go in net. Every single shot I dropped on, I butterflied on every shot. Even if they came from the far end, I butterflied on them. So we won the game 3-2 or 2-1 or something. So as I'm walking off the ice, Dan Maloney goes, "That's a great job standing up out there, Alan." So from that point on, I decided coaches don't know anything about goaltending.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, you got to do what works for you. I mean, if it works for other goalies, that's great. But if it doesn't work for you and you're losing games, then you don't want to keep doing
Well,
it,
and the funny thing
obviously.
is, I mean, the whole style of game has gone to butterfly. Everybody butterflies now. At the time, Greg Millens were standing up, Don Edwards were standing up, but I was kind of developed a different style, and I butterflied a lot, and that was the way I played.
Yeah. Do you remember your first NHL start?
Yeah, we were in Minnesota. I had not started, but I went in relief of Rick St. Croix a couple nights beforehand in Toronto against the Nordiques, and I played well. I made a few good saves, and it was a nice start. And we played, I think, another game against Montreal in Toronto, and I didn't get the start, but we went to Minnesota, and he told me right before warm-up that I was starting. He didn't want to tell me the night before because he figured I'd be too nervous and everything. So Mike Nicolak told me right before warm-up that I was starting that night. So it was a good night. We ended up losing, I think, 5-4. I played well. I had 36 saves. It was too bad we lost, but that was a good night. I played well.
Yeah. Were you nervous? I mean, like you thought you'd be?
Um, it was a situation where it was a no-lose situation. Toronto wasn't doing well. This was a bit of a trial for them to see if I had NHL caliber skills. So it was. I don't remember how nervous I was, to be honest with you. But again, it was a no-lose situation. I just go in and do the best I can.
Right. And if you had, like you said, 36 saves and you played well, then you proved to them that you could play in the NHL and obviously then you had a lengthy career.
And then my first start in Toronto was the next game again, Maple Leaf Gardens against Chicago. And Murray Bannerman was in the other net for Chicago, and we tied 2-2. And it was the first point the Leafs had gotten in weeks. So I was the headline the next day. Bester makes his point or something like that. So from then on, the fans were behind me 100%. They were just awesome.
Yeah. Where do you think the hardest place to play back then was?
Probably Boston Gardens. They were right on top of you, and it was a small rink. Um, I didn't have a lot of success in Winnipeg, and that was nothing to do with the rink or anything like that. It was just the style of game that ended up going. It was a run and gun style, high scoring, Howard Chuck and that. But I struggled against Winnipeg a lot through my career. A lot of high scoring games. But then I loved playing in Detroit. I loved playing in the Joe. It was great. Um, I had very good success there against Detroit. So Chicago Stadium was a tough one too because the dressing rooms were in the basement and you had to climb up the stairs to get to the ice. And so that was not my favorite arena. Although when you heard the national anthem with the organ and the singer, it was just amazing. It was nothing like it.
Yeah, that's unique coming out of the basement.
Yeah.
There was a local high school team and the rink they play at here, they have to go upstairs for their locker room. So you'll see them go off the ice and they climb up these stairs and go into their locker room. And kind of a similar thing. You gotta climb all these stairs to get to your dressing room. And
Well, the first time I played in Madison Square Gardens, I walked in and I said, where are the dressing rooms? They said, oh, it's on the fifth floor. I said, what? I said, what are you talking about on the fifth floor?
did they have an elevator for you at least?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that'd be a lot. Try, I don't know, five steps, five stairs there just to get to your dressing room in full gear, and you'd be burned out by the time you got up there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, you played for two of the biggest franchises in NHL history with the Red Wings and the Leafs, and you weren't in Detroit for a long time, but what a phenomenal team to be a part of, even for a little bit. I mean, the level of talent on those teams is incredible.
Yeah, Detroit was a short cup of coffee. I got traded there, and I thought, I was going to be the starting goaltender within a month, and it never materialized. I ended up playing 3 games for Detroit that season. Um, Not great results, but played well, but not great results. And they started with me and Shovel Day the next season, and I didn't get to really play any games for that segment of the season. And then I got hurt. I strained one of my knee ligaments, so they sent me down to Adirondack, and then I remained there for the rest of the year. But that was probably the biggest benefit to the second half of my career because I was working with Barry Melrose, who was a phenomenal coach. He really boosted my confidence, and we ended up winning the Calder Cup.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that, the Calder Cup. I mean, for those who don't know, it's like the Stanley Cup, but for the AHL. Um, so I mean, winning any trophy is obviously exciting. I know everyone wants to win a Stanley Cup, but if you can win a Calder Cup, I mean, that's still a heck of an achievement.
Yeah, I still won my ring to this day. It's great. We had a solid team. Barry knew how to motivate each individual player. Not the same motivation for everybody. And it was a long, tough season, and we ended up going to the finals and beating Toronto's farm system in the final, which was kind of satisfying. I got to wave at the Leaf brass that traded me.
Yeah. Yeah, you got your little moment of revenge, if you want to call it, or would you say that there was a really big difference in the level of play from the NHL to the AHL in those days? Could you
Um,
notice it when you went down, or
there is, but it's not that big. I mean, a lot of these players are going to go to the NHL, or guys that have been in the NHL and are on the ends of their careers. So it was uh, it was a good level of hockey, definitely. It took a little bit of adjustment at first, for the speed of the game, but it's definitely just a half step below the NHL at the time.
yeah, yeah. I feel like not nowadays. There's a lot of guys who make a career. They play their entire career in the AHL. Maybe they get pulled up for a game or two in the NHL, but you see guys that play 400 or 500 games in the AHL over a career, and that's a really respectable hockey career.
Yeah, yeah. It's just the level of um, financial remuneration is not that great.
Right.
That was what when you're playing for 25,000 at the time. It was kind of tough.
Right.
For the family.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, yeah, I think that's a thing that well, hockey's always been, a little bit you look at the MLB, you look at the NBA and now the NFL and the major contracts these guys are signing. I saw Devin Booker in the NBA signed a 2-year deal at $72 million a year. And if you look at NHL players, top players in the league are getting paid maybe 13, 14 million a year. So it's really and then especially if you trickle down into the farm leagues and the AHL, the ECHL, right? The money gets smaller and smaller as you go down. But yeah, if you look at the top, it doesn't even compare to MLB and NBA and
Well, in 1984, I was the starting goaltender for the Toronto Maple Leafs, making 70,000 Canadian. And 10 years later, Curtis Joseph is making 7 million a year for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So it's 100 times difference in 10 years.
that's
That's
crazy.
just tells you what happened to salaries with salary disclosure and Alan Eagleson being removed, and it just made a huge difference with the salaries.
Right. And the game has grown, over the years from when you played to now. Obviously, there's been so many expansion teams in various parts of the country where people probably thought that never happened, right? Las Vegas teams and LA teams, Anaheim, Florida, Texas, all these warm weather states now where hockey is huge. There's a Division One. I live near Michigan Tech University. It was a great Division One program, and now they often have kids from California, Florida. that are recruited and on their team. It's a regular thing now because there's such strong hockey around these franchises. It's grown all over the country.
Yeah, the NHL definitely brings in the minor league hockey and the hockey for kids and that and supports that so they can develop players from warm weather states.
Right. Yeah, you look, there's the right, you've got the Anaheim Junior Ducks and you've got all the every franchise has their little teams and then more ice rinks get built and gives kids more exposure. I mean, even if you look across the world, hockey has grown. There's so many countries you look and there's a country they've got two ice rinks in the entire nation, but now they have a national team that competes at the D level of the World Championships or something. But I think that's it's pretty neat when you start seeing these, really random, obscure nations, and they've got a hockey team, right? They might not be very good, but that's a huge step just to have a hockey team and have to practice. You've got one ice rink in the whole country, and you've got a national team.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So you played, against some of the greatest players ever too, and you get a little bit of time with the Red Wings. You would have, Stevie Y and then even with the Maple Leafs. I mean, Rick Vaive. I think he's a very underrated player when people are talking about the greatest players ever, and they look back and I mean, he had so many just huge goal scoring seasons,
Yes.
phenomenal goal scorer. I mean, if we look at whose record did Austin Matthews break at the Leafs? It was his.
Yep.
So you played with, but then obviously you played against some very phenomenal players in that era of hockey.
Well, and when I went to the Leafs, I ended up playing with Boris Salming, which
Yep.
he's a legend. Another underrated player was Gary Leeman. He scored 50 goals. Old Chuck Osborne and Lehman was a great line, and Gary ended up scoring 50. So, then I went to Detroit and got to play with Yzerman and a few other the top name players. Can't think of their names right now. And then got to play against, Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux and Dale Hawerchuk and Curry and Anderson and all those guys, and then of course the Islanders with Trache and Bossy. So I got to play during some of the high scoring years of the NHL, that's for sure.
And I think it's interesting to look at the level of equipment that was being used, right? If you look at the sticks that Gretzky was using when he scored, versus the sticks they have now with all the flex and all this extra, how there's so much science that goes into engineering a hockey stick now. And if you look at back then, the skates and the helmets and everything, it's really impressive. It makes it more impressive what Gretzky did with what he had to use.
Also, look at the goaltending equipment. It's gotten so much larger, so much lighter. I mean, I wore deer hair and leather pads that, got to be 15, 20 pounds a piece. Now, two pads are under 5 pounds. And, the equipment gotten bigger. Plus, the goaltenders have gotten bigger. Nowadays, if I was breaking into the league or trying to break into the league, I wouldn't even get a sniff, even for junior, because I'm 5'7". You have to be 6'4" and above to play goal these days. You got to cover more net because you're going to drop and block. So
Right. Yeah.
it's amazing how the game is gone. And then you've got the overall sticks and skates and everything that's improved, and the players have improved too. I mean, they're at one time Gretzky was 10 years ahead of everybody, but that slowly changed as players started to develop and become better players. They started playing more like Gretzky, and then you've got a Connor McDavid who's probably 4 or 5 years ahead of everybody. His speed and ability is remarkable.
Right. Yeah, no, it really is the skill and what guys can do nowadays, um, which I want to touch on in a second. But before we move to that, going on the equipment, did you notice a difference even just within your own career from like when you started playing to when you were playing your final games and just like the pads and everything? I mean, did it change that quickly in those 10, 15 years?
It did. It did. I remember going to Dallas and I tried Andy Moog's pads on, and they were super light. And what a weird feeling being in net with those. Just just a completely different feel. So I practiced the one day with them, and I was, oh, that's pretty cool. So I went back to my pads, and I was like, wow, what a difference. I noticed it's amazing the lightness of those pads and the agility. And if I hadn't been at the end of my career, I probably would have made the switch.
Yeah. So when you were in Dallas, would that have been when Mike Modano was there?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Best, I think,
Newendike,
best American
Newendike,
player ever. I mean, I don't know. People can argue it, obviously. People always have an argument who they think is, but I think everything he did, he's the best American hockey player ever.
funny thing was, I played against him when he was with Minnesota back early in his career. So it came full
Yeah.
circle. That was one of the first players I played against, and then I ended up finishing with him. So
Yeah. It's funny how life works that way. There's so many full circle moments, peop in people's careers when they're playing sports, or sometimes I've talked to different actors and people maybe that they worked with in their or maybe they went to acting school with them and then they did a movie way later in life, 20 years later with that
yeah.
person, or there's it's just funny how you have those full circle moments. So you mentioned skill change, and I know people have a lot of arguments about that nowadays because the game has gotten faster. There's more skill, which I don't think people are complaining about, but it's also gotten a little less physical. There's less fighting. Most teams have one enforcer. Some teams don't have any enforcers anymore. It's kind of a dying breed in hockey. What do you think about that?
Well, I think if as long as they continue to check and hit, you can do away with the fighting. It's not a necessary part of the game as far as I'm concerned. You're being a goaltender and never got in a fight. That's the way it is. Um, but I really almost think they need to go to Olympic ice. They need to have more room out there. Guys are just it bogs up the game playing on a standard rink. I just think Olympic ice would allow for more of the skilled players showing off their skills.
Yeah. Right, and there's so many of them. Even if you look down at guys who are on the third line, they have tremendous skill. I mean, the depth on these teams is phenomenal. So I mean, I
Well, you've
agree
got
with you.
you've got such a huge world to choose from nowadays. The game has opened up so much across the country and the world, and you've got so many options from players that have that ability. Where at one time, you were kind of stuck with a third and fourth liner that maybe didn't have the skill set.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about how the game has grown in this country, but there's so many other countries who have elevated their national programs, and there's so many international stars now that are, not that there weren't back in the day, but there's just other countries that have elevated. Switzerland is now one of the top countries in the world in hockey. Germany is, grown even more. They always had some successful hockey players, but they've grown even more to when you're having world competitions, those countries are in the mix for gold medal games, and you're seeing that translate into the NHL with these different stars. I feel like if you look back, it was mostly Canadians and Americans and some Russians that were the top players in the world, but now you look at Leon Draisaitl, he's one of the best players in the world. He's German.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I played with quite a few, the Inacheks, the Freachers, and Salming, those guys. I played with a bunch that came over early and paved the way for the rest of the country and the rest of the world.
Yeah, definitely. And then now we're gonna have the NHL players back in the Olympics, looks like.
Yeah, that'll be good. I'll be watching that, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. I feel like it gives us, the Americans more of a chance, the Canadians more of a chance. So many of those other countries have the other levels of professional hockey. They're really good hockey players. If you have Germans from the Dell and you some of those top level Swiss leagues on their teams, it's hard for American and Canadian college players to step up to that level. I mean, if you've
Yeah.
played in the Dell for 10, 15 years, you can be a heck of a hockey player with a lot of experience. Um, so, I think it'll just set a more of an even playing field for the world because those other countries will still have their star NHL players. Germany with Draisaitl and Grubauer in goal, And so I think it's exciting. And who doesn't want to watch the best players in the world, you know, play
Compete
with
on
each
this
other?
stage. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. You'll have Austin Matthews and then you'll have obviously Connor McDavid and who knows who else will be. Right? Will Sidney Crosby make another appearance? Or, because he can still play, even though he's getting older, he can still play at an incredible level. Patrick Kane, will he sneak onto the American team? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
So do you think I've talked to a lot of players who um struggled, right, transitioning out of sports into the business world, into what, because it's what they did for their whole life. They grew up playing hockey, played hockey for a job, and now you're however old, and you've done it for 25, 30 years of your life. That's all you've known, and you've got to be somebody else now. Did you find it difficult to transition into the business world?
It was a difficult transition, definitely. I decided to retire at 35, and mainly because of my ankle, which I had surgery on. They had to reconstruct my ankle because of tendon problems. Which, funny thing was, throughout my career, I had issues with my right ankle, um, and always thought it was the skates because Bauer had changed the skates so much. I always thought it was a skate issue. Come to realize later in life that I had hurt my ankle playing slow pitch baseball. I'd stretched the ligaments. I twisted my ankle like a severe ankle strain, and stretched the ligaments. So therefore, I was pronating on the outside of my ankle, so I never felt comfortable in the skates again. And I battled through it my whole career, thinking it was a skate issue, but it wasn't. It was an actually my ankle. And come later in life, it finally tore, and I had to have it repaired. Um, so I decided to retire at 35 because I just wasn't playing at the level I expected of myself anymore. So I put in a resume to Disney and Universal because I was living in Orlando and decided to stay here. So I put resumes out to them. But what could I put on my resume? I was a professional hockey player. That's basically it. I did some charity work. I did, TV interviews, all that kind of stuff. But really, my resume was mainly I was a professional hockey player for 15 years. And so I had three or four interviews with Universal, and it looked really good to get into the sales because I didn't need a lot of technical experience to get into sales. And came down to the last interview, and the general manager or whatever he was, the director decided he didn't want another professional athlete. They already had an ex-baseball player working for them, and he didn't want another professional athlete, so he squashed it. So I had my family come down and stay at a hotel that was working with the team, and they had looked after my sister. They gave her a suite, poolside, and took care of us. So I called the sales manager who took care of me to say, "Hey, I'm announcing my retirement today." And they said to me, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm looking for a job, basically." And they said, "Well, why don't you put your resume in here and call the director of sales because we need sales managers. We just did a changeover to a different management company and we've gotten rid of a lot of people. So we've got a lot of openings. Why don't you put your resume in here?" So I sent a resume to the director of sales and I ended up calling him 4 times to set up an interview. Later on, he told me after the third call, he had decided to hire me. And I ended up working for Holiday Inn, regional office, 5 hotels. And as he said, I can teach you the hotel industry. I can teach you sales. I can't teach personality, and you have the personality for this. So he hired me, and that started the progression. I worked 5 years for Holiday Inn. Then I went to Marriott for 7 years and then a couple years at a small hotel in between. And then I'm working for Hilton now, which I've got three of the best hotels in all of Orlando. Working for Hilton, handling sales, 10 rooms to 1,500 rooms a night, everything from soccer teams with 10 rooms to Major League Baseball winter meetings, which is 1,500 rooms. So I've been doing it for 11 years at Hilton. Got 3 more left before I finally call it quits completely.
I think what you mentioned, it's really important for people coming out of college or getting into a job, the personality thing. I had so many professors that told me, and I told my classes that as long as you were willing to learn and you had a good personality, that counted for more than, oh, you've got a 4-point GPA and you've got a, like, yeah, experience is wonderful and they love experience, and being smart and getting good grades, that's all wonderful. But if you have a terrible personality, nobody's gonna want to hire you. It doesn't matter how smart you are.
Right, right. And having the background I had in sports with the determination and the work ethic and things like that, he came into effect with him, and I appreciate him very much for giving me a chance.
Yeah. Have you enjoyed it? I mean, I'm assuming because you've stayed within hotels your whole career then.
Well, I have enjoyed it. Yes, it's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. You got to make your numbers every quarter, and just to retain your job. But I've done well. I've won awards with Hilton. I've won awards with Marriott. I've won awards with Hilton. Um, so it continues to be a a struggle to make sure you make your numbers every quarter, but things have worked out good. And I'm handling sports groups, so it's not a huge stretch for me. It's not like I'm handling an association with a lot of moving parts. I'm handling sports groups, so anything, as I said, from 10 rooms a night to 1,500 rooms a night. I get to work with the NBA. I get to work with MLB. I haven't gotten any hockey yet. Still trying to see if I can talk the owners into coming, the NHL owners to come to the Hilton. So, but it's been good, and but I am looking forward to retirement. I'm just about done. Working since the age of what, 16. I'm ready to call it a quits.
Yeah, what are you looking forward to most about retirement? What are you gonna do? Golf, fish, or what,
Much of both, very much of both. I still do a lot of fishing here. I do a lot of golfing on the weekends. It was nice to go back to the Waldorf Astoria Golf Club this past weekend and play there. Being working for the hotel, I get free golf, so it was definitely a fun time to get out with a buddy of mine and have a good day and come back and have lunch. But it is an hour and a half drive for me, so I don't do it very often.
Yeah. How's your golf game?
Good, good. I'm under a 10 handicap, so and I've took a half hour lesson with the new Golf Pro, and we've flattened out my swing, and it's helped. So, I'm like a nine handicap right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've just gotten into golf last year, so this is my second year, and I've become absolutely obsessed with it. I'm going, 3 or 4 times a week,
Well, that's awesome.
and yesterday I was pretty psyched. I got my first birdie and first eagle in the same day. So
Nice, very nice, very
I
nice.
was I was on this last hole at the course, and it was a short par four, like 240, and
Oh,
these
okay.
guys were on the green, and I thought, I'm not going to hit them. Usually, I hit it about 220, 230, and I ended up driving the green, and I walked up. I said, "Oh, geez, I'm so sorry. I almost hit you guys," and don't worry about it. It was a heck of a drive, and I had like a 25 footer uphill, and I thought, you know what, it'd be nice if I could get close. I'll have two birdies. And I ended up dropping it in there, and I thought, wow, that it's kind of like a monkey off my back, in the golf progression, working towards. First, it was like, well, I got to get my first par, and now birdie and eagle, and it's kind of freeing.
Yes. Well, I've had two hole-in-ones, and they've been spaced out quite a few years. So I'm looking for my third right now. I came close at the 185-yard par three at Waldorf. I missed it by about an inch from. So,
Oh,
you know, looking forward to my third hole-in-one. So
yeah. Yeah, golf, it's fun. I don't know. I feel like if you start, it's hard to not get sucked into it and just want to keep getting better. And it's a hard game, but for me, if I hit a couple of nice shots in a round, even if it's a bad round, that's just enough to keep you coming back.
exactly, exactly.
So why don't we end on, do you still follow hockey? Do you still follow the Leafs, or do you still follow the Canadians like when you were a kid, or who do you follow?
I don't watch much hockey anymore. I'm mostly pro football and golf. That's probably the two things I watch the most. I will watch some games during the playoffs, especially the Stanley Cup Finals. Um, Still rooting for the Leafs. Hoping they do well. A lot of my friends here are ex-Canadians or from Toronto area, so we definitely talk a little bit about how the Leafs are going to do, and I tease them every year about how the Leafs fall in the spring, and so. Um, I feel for the city. It's
Yeah.
been a tough time. It will happen sooner, hopefully sooner than later. And it's great the support they offer the team, and it's great. All my family's still up in Canada, so we talk a little hockey now and then.
What football team do you root for?
Well, that depends on who's playing. I don't. Tampa Bay Bucks definitely are the team that I cheer most for. But I can watch any game because I normally look and see what player do I like on that team, and then I'll root for that team for the day. So it's great that I'm not locked into one team. I can watch a multitude of games and enjoy them and root for one of the two teams. And and normally it's the quarterback, whoever I like as a quarterback. It's same when I play with hockey. I used to cheer for teams that were the goaltender I liked. I like their style, I like their ability. I'll cheer for that team other than the Leafs.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a nice way to do it. There's so many people that they're diehard fans, but they also have like diehard hatred towards other teams, you know. It takes a lot of energy.
Exactly. Exactly. Like take it or leave it. I cheer for the Dallas Cowboys today, or I cheer for Pittsburgh. It just depends on who they're playing and who I like.
Right, right. And then in golf, it's been, Scotty Scheffler with another huge win. He just looks like a machine out there, and he's hard to stop when he gets rolling.
Is it the second coming of Tiger? Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. People argue about that one all day too. He keeps hitting, all the milestones, the wins at the certain age, and he's won two majors this year. Um, so and I really think he's going to win here down the stretch too, at least one or two more times.
Yeah, I agree.
He's just at the top of his game, and it's crazy when he has a bad day. Most people would give anything for that.
Well, if he has a bad weekend, he's in the top 10.
Yeah,
It
right.
was a bad weekend for him.
I think it was a couple weekends ago. He hit three fairways, but he was still what, three or four under par for a round or something. And most people, if they hit three fairways, they're going to be plus 15 or
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
he is awesome to watch. Every part of his game, too. I mean, he's just so well-rounded, such a well-rounded player. There's so many guys. So that guy's a great driver, that guy's a great putter, but Scotty can do it all and he can get out of dangerous, he there's no way he can do anything with that shot and then he'll end up at least saving par, or.
Yeah. Yeah. Tiger was a completely different player. I mean, Tiger would get in trouble and then make an absolutely incredible, unbelievable shot to get himself back in position for make a birdie. So, Scotty's much more plodding down the middle, getting it on the green, birdie or two putt. He's very machine-like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But definitely fun to watch for sure. Well,
Be
Alan, I
interesting to see
appreciate.
if it'd be interesting if he can get closer to Tiger and Jack and the major wins. He's got to
Yeah.
stay healthy though. You got to stay healthy
Well,
to do that.
it's the biggest question mark in sports. There's so many athletes. You look through history, what would have happened if they would have never gotten hurt? If you look at the NFL, I think about Joe Theismann or
Hmm.
RG3, guys that had these injuries when they were younger. What would have happened to their careers? And it's the biggest thing that you can do a lot to keep your body in good shape, but that doesn't mean you're not going to get hurt. Nobody plans to get hurt. It just happens. So yeah, if Scotty can stay healthy, I think he can definitely keep climbing that. He's such a cool cucumber too. He doesn't let his emotions get the best of him, which I think is really really helpful. You see a lot of these players, they get pretty worked up and then it snowballs downhill after that. But
Exactly.
yeah, it'd be exciting, over the next 5 years to see what Scotty can do.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, Alan, I appreciate you taking some time out of your morning and coming on the podcast. It was wonderful.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for more episodes soon.